Among the many things that turned in the general's mind every night, the super mutant plague that littered the Commonwealth was almost the most troubling to him. These towering mutant monsters had attacked the former settlement at Nordhagen, and if unchecked, they would keep spreading out. Diamond City had many encounters with them over the years, but no one knew where they came from. The men at Oberlin Station had been assigned to observe them and had noticed in the recent weeks that, since many of the local raiders had been killed, the mutants were adventuring further and further out. He deeply desired more information about why the super mutants had chosen to take up residence in Fort Strong. The next morning, the general gathered his escort and made way for Fort Strong. His goal was to gather intel on numbers and what kind of weaponry they had, so that he could better formulate a plan. A few moments after crossing the fort's front gate, they were met with a boulder flung directly at them. Tori quickly tackled the general out of the way, but Aaron wasn't so lucky. The boulder struck him and went flying into the sea. Quickly recovering from the surprise, they took cover on the bridge. The group returned fire, while the general radioed in an artillery strike on the super mutants. While the bars were quite effective against human targets, the super mutants were much more resistant to them, taking an entire mag to put down a single super mutant. Within a minute, the general received word that the castle had marked the location, and the rounds were heading their way. The general ordered his guards to retreat to the gatehouse, and he would cover them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Commonwealth, at Sanctuary, a large group of raiders had assembled and were preparing an attack on Sanctuary. Most of them were from the smaller gangs that hadn't been wiped out. The leader of the gang was a woman named Violet. She had been a former lieutenant of the Gunners, but was forced out of the group due to her more violent passions. She had assembled the smaller, fractured gangs and acquired many advanced parts of pre-war combat armor to give to her raiders. They had planned to attack the eastern side of the settlement, where the defences had not yet been fortified. It was still mostly just wooden walls, with barbed wire strung about, several significant holes where a person could fit through easily. The raiders waited until the guards were scheduled to change, then rushed across the riverbank towards the fence. While the water was radioactive, they were undeterred by the fact that they would receive an unhealthy dose of radiation. Corporal Madison was still at Sanctuary, as she had been working on arranging the elections. The local militia stationed there was quickly rounded up at the first shot, and men rushed towards the gunfire. Many of the militia were in their regular clothing as they had grabbed their gun and run to the scene. This had been drilled into these locals by the Minutemen soldiers who lived there. A fairly large firefight was started just on the other side of the bar, with civilians joining the battle as they had been caught up in the fight. Corporal Madison had gathered the few soldiers she had with her and rushed them into the fight. In the end, only 2 people died, one militia member and a local settler who had joined the fight. 7 of the raiders had surrendered along with their leader, Violet, who, even though she was violent, didn't want to die. Corporal Madison was infuriated that the settlement's walls hadn't been built better and issued a command directive to all the available Minutemen stationed nearby. They were ordered to prioritise wall construction with the utmost urgency. While this was a monumental task to encompass the entire settlement, she was determined to see it through. She wouldn't be pleased with just any type of wall, though. Madison wanted something sturdy that would last. Luckily for the Minutemen, when they weren't on patrol or on a mission, they had plenty of time. She also had the help of the newly upgraded construction bots to help cut and haul the wood. It wasn't long before they had set up a well-oiled logging camp for making the walls in mass. And even more luck was on their side, since the area was full of dead trees that needed to be chopped down anyway. It would take anywhere from 3 to 6 months with the current manpower they had, so Corporal Madison sent a courier to the castle to see if they could produce any new construction bots at the factory yet. It had been many months, and with the added knowledge from Jake, the place had been patched together fairly well. Several of the construction lines were functional. The only thing lacking was armor and the ability to produce weaponry for any bots made. The weapons machines had been almost entirely destroyed due to an explosion that had happened in the past, leaving them in an irreparable state. Private Alice had been promoted to corporal and was now overseeing the factory. she had the few apprentice mechanics begin assembling 14 new construction bots. Given the advanced Assam technology, they would be able to work 24 hours a day with almost no guidance to build walls. Jake assisted with programming the proper tasks into the bots' Assam chips after each one was finished. The general and his men had successfully cleared most of the super mutants from Fort Strong. They had been waiting till the last few that were still holding up inside the main building came out. It had been 2 weeks, and they had still seen no signs that they wanted to leave. The general was quite sure that it meant only one thing: there was an underground facility. If there wasn't, they surely would have run out of drinkable water by now. The general knew that it would be a death sentence for anyone to enter there in anything less than full riot gear. And even then, a super mutant could easily brutalize a normal person. The only thing that came to mind was a suit of power armor. He and his squad from the Alaskan War had used several suits to repel the invasion. They were amazing pieces of technology, but finding one that hadn't been scavenged a long time ago would be hard. The most logical place would be to check any pre-war military facilities. He did remember that there were several crashed vertibirds that were in undesirable areas like old crumbling bridges, but getting anything from those would be dangerous at best. It was decided that for the time being, Fort Strong would be heavily secured with guards and turrets to watch for anything trying to leave the place. The general ordered that the word be spread to anyone who might know where unscavenged power armor might be. It was a long shot, he knew, but it was worth trying. The National Guard training yard was the nearest military installation that wasn't picked clean, despite the massive number of active turrets still. It would be risky, but if a small team of a few skilled men snuck in using the stealth boys they had, then they could disarm the turrets. The massive amount of tech and/or weaponry that might be in this base made it worth the risk. Corporal Alice was assigned as the leader of this mission. She would be granted permission to choose anyone she saw fit to assist her best. After rounding up several highly tech-savvy individuals, they set off for the old settlement of Country Road Crossing. They would take their time analysing turret locations and strategize the best way to infiltrate the place. It wasn't long before a courier arrived with word that several individuals wearing power armor had been spotted crossing the Commonwealth several weeks ago. The general quickly gathered a small group of men to assist in acquiring the suits. They set off towards the Cambridge area, where the group was last sighted. 2280. This is the first report that was listed in the castle's archives of power armor-clad men entering the Commonwealth, digging through old ruins for what appeared to be old-world tech. Most of the Minutemen's files on activities in the Commonwealth had been lost when the castle fell. Little was known, and even less was recorded. The next time these shiny rust buckets would show themselves was in 2084. A group called Recon Squad Artemis, which Paladin Brandis led, but only after a few short hours of being inserted into the Commonwealth, they would mysteriously disappear. The decline of the Minutemen was well underway, so keeping tabs on them was not a priority. This latest expedition was also known as Recon Squad Gladius. They had been deployed to the Commonwealth to search for signs of the Institute's whereabouts. The general and his detachment arrived to the thunder of explosions and gunfire. The sound echoed through the ruined streets, a chaotic rhythm that demanded immediate action. Without hesitation, the general pushed his squad toward the source, only to be met by a surging horde of feral ghouls, drawn by the noise and hungry for anything alive. They opened fire instantly. The bars and M1 carbines barked and muzzles flashed as the Minutemen carved into the masses of ghouls, charging them without hesitation. The squad anchored themselves at a street corner, just one building away from where the gunshots were coming from. Brass littered the ground as they cut their way forward. As they advanced, the distant gunfire grew weaker. The general motioned forward his men and pressed into the defensive walls that had been set up. Inside, they finally saw 6 people in a desperate last stand. At the front was their leader, clad in a full suit of power armor with the helmet off, shouting commands over the chaos. 2 other armored men lay badly injured, unable even to stand. Their situation was dire. Startled by the sudden arrival of the Minutemen, the defenders nearly opened fire. Weapons jerked up, fingers tightened on triggers. For a split second, the general and his squad were almost mistaken for yet another wave of ferals. But the armoured leader, Paladin Dance, bellowed for his people to hold their fire and gestured the newcomers into the barricades quickly. There was no time for names, no time for explanations. Another wave of ghouls came screaming from the streets. The line collapsed where the wounded knights lay. Ferals swarmed them, overwhelming the 2 injured men in power armour and tearing them apart before anyone could help. One of the unarmoured defenders fell soon after, dragged down in the frenzy. The firefight became a brutal struggle for survival, gunfire echoing through the ruined streets for several long minutes. When the last feral finally hit the ground and the smoke began to clear, another knight was found injured and 2 of the Minutemen lay badly wounded. The battle was won, but only barely.